I think one of the things that really separates us from the high primates is that we're tool builders. And I read a study that measured the efficiency of locomotion for various species on the planet. The condor used the least energy to move a kilometer. And humans came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. It was not too proud of a showing for the crown of creation. So that didn't look so good, but then somebody at Scientific American had the insight to test the efficiency of locomotion for a man on a bicycle. And a man on a bicycle, or a human on a bicycle, blew the condor away, completely off the top of the charts. And that's what a computer is to me. What a computer is to me is, it's the most remarkable tool that we've ever come up with. And it's the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds.
That's something Steve Jobs said, you know? The computer guy. A man on bike is the most energy efficient animal, moving itself per unit mass. Well, remember that. Why, hello there. I'm here in the original social network, the park. One of the features that I love most about parks is their special ability to draw people together from all places, all ages, genders, religions, backgrounds, and socioeconomic status, if done well. I'm Mitchell Fransen, a graduate student researcher, media practitioner, and promoter of vibrant urban places. I attend the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and I love focusing in on placemaking, urban sustainability, and how the built environment and our actions toward the natural environment affect us all, and our finances, environmental impact, and civic health. In this video, I'm going to speak on public access and our design factors prerequisite to parks and their programming. We love parks, trailways, plazas, and these urban ecosystems we can shape to make sure our cities have rich social, environmental, and financial activity that fuels the lives of these people. That's right, in urban centers. So, for you rural folk, all these points may not hit home as it pertains to your way of living, but 83% of all Americans live in urban regions. So we'll focus on factors that have the largest impact on mankind and our relationship with the places we call home. Here, we care about park accessibility. Most places aim to cater toward all. I mean, who wouldn't want everyone in their parks? Okay, sadly, there have been some less than humane practices over the years that have made it much harder for people to enjoy an optimal standard of living wherever they choose to reside. I'll touch on this and tangential factors that allow for the fruit of our work in public parks to be enjoyed by all, or some. Transportation, for instance, it's a huge element of living and our urban systems, but policy, favoritism, developmental financing, governmental deals, racism, and marketing have played a huge role in deciding who are the haves and have-nots. For instance, the paving of urban freeways in the 1950s, an oxymoron in itself, through city centers, not only stripped from the hands of minorities the opportunity to have a seat at the civic table and realize respect from their fellow neighbors, but exhaust fumes, noise pollution, and other petrochemicals from road redevelopment and continued tire wear play their own part in the disintegration of generational equity and health. So, on to mothers and children. Mothers who raise children near highways have a higher likelihood of preterm birth, a higher likelihood of low birth weight children, small for gestational age birth, as well as cardiovascular disease, early onset asthma, childhood leukemia, and premature death. These areas have more pavement, less verdure. They have much greater heat island effects, raising surface temperatures to greater levels than other parts of the city. And if we look at GIS data of the highest surface temperatures in just the city of Phoenix, it almost directly aligns with a map that showcases the concentration of childhood poverty and socioeconomic vulnerability. This list goes on, but we want to preserve a few things when we look really closely at our values in our cities, all right? Money, environment, and people/social connections. So money, our financial resources. It helps cities to do things well and improve services. We need that. The environment we exist within, our places, the natural and built environment should be cared for. And then people, our social capital, the fruit of quality places, families, social infrastructure, and civic engagement. But the ways in which we viewed our development patterns over the past 70 years has greatly deteriorated the hopes of having optimal financial, environmental, and civic resilience in the present. Much research in urban planning would even define most North American walking experiences as hostile to the pedestrian and to everyone outside the car. We've catered toward the car, and in doing so, have ran into some major setbacks in our cities. if we want to achieve everything we aim for and have our parks fulfill the promise of delivering the results they were intended for and at a public scale, we must advocate for some urban practices that benefit all society if we want to continue saying that we really serve the public. Because there are many prerequisites that dictate what that public is, how it's defined, and who stands to benefit. Parks and recreation as a whole aims to get people outdoors, in parks, involved in their communities, socially active, and receptive to the needs of the environments that sustain us, while funding these programs and experiences as effectively as possible. Sadly, our urban developmental practices have led us to achieve less than desirable results that actually exacerbates inequity and leads to public expenditure being used as a band-aid for societal failures rather than an investment in interconnected systems of greater health, wealth, and civic engagement. Now, let's go back to the post-war era. Cars were just beginning to flourish among the middle class. A single income could provide for a family of 4, a dog, and keep a big lawn maintained. The American idea of freedom in the post-war era was just this, and the GI Bill certainly helped. What that did is it provided a means for mostly white males who had served to secure adequate funding in a business, farm, or for a residential development, often on the outskirts of urban areas. And this allowed for quick, inexpensive builds that would look all nice and pretty until they didn't. When we build all at once, things age all at once, especially if financed through sources which won't be available in the future. Check out the content made by Charles Marone and the team at Strong Towns if you want to actually do a deep dive into municipal finances and developmental debt cycles. Ultimately, what we're seeing in our roadways and cities now is that with the nature of sprawl, water, sewer, electric, and gas infrastructure, and similar services that must be spread over such large geographic areas are actually finding themselves supported by much less substantial tax base to continue said service delivery. So, what do we realize now? Higher property taxes. And we're looking at the negative externalities of residential sprawling development and historically lowest new housing stock for the past 14 years since the 1960s that leads to higher residential prices as well, often in sprawling, unsustainable developmental forms. This means higher future costs. Now, let's discuss sprawl and what it does for our environment. Surely there's more green visible for everyone, so it must be more green than dense cities. Put simply, no. Physics, geometry, and energy consumption tells us that. If you're going to be rural, enjoy. If you want an urban experience it must be, because suburbia is the least financially solvent or environmentally sustainable dwelling pattern to develop and sustain. Here's why. We have a variety of dwellings, often single-family homes. Not your fault, that's just Euclidean zoning. Laws of yesteryear dominating the housing policy realm of today. But what's this do for us? Well, it encourages driving. Suburban sprawl, where there's homes here, businesses here, eateries here. It requires everyone to take their individual car through routes all funneled into arterial roads toward other districts where commerce happens, then to places where recreation occurs, then schools, then churches, then grocery stores, then work. But we care about children, right? If we truly cared about the children, we wouldn't subject them to unwalkable neighborhoods where they need parental shuttle. They would have dignity and autonomy in their play experiences, in their travel journeys, and in knowledge of their communities. There wouldn't be endless backed-up drop-off and pickup car lanes in front of schools, emitting CO2 and toxic fumes every second. We wouldn't be okay with a lack of crosswalks, pedestrian-friendly infrastructure, protected bike lanes, quality signage, vehicle rerouting, slower speeds, traffic calming measures of any form, building dense housing near schools, parks, and transit, and we surely would not be the nation with the only dissenting position on the 2020 United Nations Stockholm Declaration. So, our streets are dangerous. In fact, 4.8 million people are admitted into hospitals each year, and 43,000 lives are taken. So, with these streets, we have a much higher chance of being maimed by a car if you're a child, a senior citizen, or disabled in any way. And these numbers are increasing year over year since 2019. Last year, Americans saw more pedestrians being killed on roadways than any year since 1982. But the trends show we simply, yes, purchase bigger cars to protect ourselves from the unsafe streets. This obviously has an effect on our urban fabric and infrastructure. If places are designed solely for driving, it doubles down on auto dependency, then the driving experience becomes worse. I'll link up a video that showcases this phenomenon for places that are multi-use, transit accessible, pedestrian and bike friendly. Also, These larger cars that private individuals choose to drive are heavier, and their throughput on this public infrastructure is now a burden on individual and community-wide systems and property taxes. We cannot say we want cheaper fuel, yet drive and buy more gas-guzzling vehicles for private use when the fuel is cheap. We cannot complain about this when we look at our style of residential developments, if we're not seeking and supporting measures to reach our global sustainable development goals, supporting mixed-use developments, density, and transit-oriented developments. Without these, of course, we'll have dependence on increasingly volatile global markets. If we care about children, we must experience the fruit of smaller vehicles for local trips, as over half of trips made in cities are less than 3 miles. Narrowing of streets, upzoning, renewable investments, and healthy land use. And if it's not sustainable, it shouldn't be embarked upon. And we should aim to fight freeway expansion, parking minimums, and help us dig ourselves out of the lack of builds over the past decade. Land isn't cheap. Why are cities using it poorly? I don't want to pave over farmland, and neither should you, especially when we build out horizontally in the most inefficient dwellings, which require much of our public services and will place only an increasing burden on us in the future. The CDC, NRPA, EPA, World Health Organization and their Healthy Cities Initiative, their Non-Communicable Disease Report, Smart Growth America, the NHTSA, NASA, and the United Nations in their Sustainable Development Goals report, and the Working Group 3's 6th Assessment Report on the Mitigation of Climate Change all note that land use, healthy urban planning, placemaking, mobility at a human scale, and people's right to move safely in the place they call home has never been more exigent than it is now. And this directly relates to the groups and demographics we define as our public, who gets access to that public, and what an individual must do to be served by said public. So what can you do? If you're operating in a role meant to provide public services paid for by your constituency, we ought to think heavily about prerequisite factors that can serve as constraints to our constituents' public experiences. Because if mobility, access, green space, air quality, traffic hazards, or anything else gets in the way of an individual's access to public services, you may as well not even be serving the public. Far too many people have said this, and I believe it originates from Hayden Clarkin. If your child needs a parental shuttle to get to the park, your child does not have access to that park. There may be limitations to what exactly you can do within your positions to move the needle on this public health issue. But I know you are equipped to play a role, even a small one, in shaping policy within your jurisdiction to serve the community in ways that improves them for years to come, and I'm confident you can be the voice for change. Because the last thing we want to do is build public services on a foundation that isn't even equipped to meet the most basic needs of the public. If you're in the field of parks and recreation and overall societal improvement, be sure to catch me as a speaker presenter at the 2022 National Recreation and Park Association Annual Conference in Phoenix in late September. I'll be speaking on active transit networks, community resiliency, past policy, and how to invest in places that elevate the human experience. And be sure to like and subscribe to this page and hit the notification bell below so you can hear more about top professionals and the work they do to enhance the lives of all who engage with Parks and Rec in Illinois and beyond. Also, in the description below, we've got several studies, findings, governmental health sheets, white papers, NGO pieces, videos, and policy fact sheets meant to elevate your understanding of urban planning and its role in equitable, healthy places for all. I'm Mitchell Fransen, University of Illinois grad student for Campfire Concepts. We love it. We love it. The rain goes.
Seriously, it's an epidemic of dangerous conditions out there, and as someone who wants amazing public places, as someone who wants parks to thrive, as someone who wants the quality, mental, emotional, physical, spatial development of children, as someone who understands that places that are made for humans also inherently suggest that they're safe for humans and facilitate the movement of humans and social interaction of humans within those spaces. This really rings true to me. So there's several elements of policy that we can push for to create places that are made for you, for your children, for optimal financial, ecological, and environmental and social outcomes. I think that's totally possible. Again, it's all an American experiment, and we can critique systems we have so long as we're willing to step up and actually be there to alter them and get people to see why this is beneficial, because I want the best outcomes for everyone, and I hope you do too. And it just, this really is near and dear to my heart. I mean, people are getting maimed by cars, and just now being surpassed by, of course, gun violence, and that's uniquely American. And there's science on this, and it can be stopped. This isn't just inevitable, and there's no such thing as just accidents. So I want you to consider this, and definitely check out some resources below, and learn about ways you can, alter your community for the better. So, thanks.